Hi, everybody. Welcome to AFTD's Advocacy Training Webinar, Advocate for Awareness, working with lawmakers to highlight FTD. My name is Lauren Palea. I am AFTD's Advocacy and Volunteer Engagement Admin. Thank you so much for joining us here today. We're going to get started shortly, but before we do, just a couple of quick points to highlight. First, if you find yourself having any technical issue as you watch today's webinar, you could use the Q&A function in Zoom to send a message explaining your problem, and an AFTD staff member working behind the scenes will try to address the issue as soon as possible. Additionally, you can use the Q&A function to submit a question for our presenters. We've reserved a bit of time at the end of this webinar to answer any questions you have about FTD advocacy, and we'll try to answer as many as possible, but you don't have to wait until the end of the webinar to ask your question. You could just put it down in the Q&A as it comes to you. Finally, this webinar will be recorded and archived for later viewing on AFTD's YouTube page. All right, now I would love to introduce our presenters, starting with myself. As I mentioned, my name is Lauren, and I am AFTD's Advocacy and Volunteer Engagement Admin. In my role here at AFTD, I support AFTD's grassroots legislative campaigns and policy initiatives, as well as supporting all volunteer program activities. Having lost my mom to FTD, AFTD's mission is one that will always be a driving force in my heart. Next, we have Megan Busby, AFTD's Director of Advocacy and Volunteer Engagement. Megan has spent years as an advocate for people with serious diseases and unmet needs. She has over 20 years of experience in advocacy relations, strategic partnerships, marketing, and communications. At AFTD, she works to develop and support AFTD's advocacy strategy, grow a national advocate network, and expand our volunteer base. Next, we have Debbie Elkins, who is an AFTD ambassador. She started volunteering for AFTD following her husband's journey to diagnosis. Driven by a passion for raising awareness in her own community and making connections with others in rural areas of West Virginia and Southeast Ohio, Debbie became an AFTD ambassador last year. As a registered nurse, Debbie hopes to use her voice to bring FTD awareness to the public, provide education, and point families to the many resources that AFTD offers to families affected by FTD. Finally, we have Matt Sharp, who is AFTD's advocacy manager. He joined AFTD staff in 2009, having earned his Master of Social Service degree from Bryn Mawr College's Graduate School of Social Work and Social Research. He made a career transition to social services from the field of natural sciences. In his role, Matt is responsible for informing AFTD's advocacy strategy and for the coordination and development of all AFTD advocacy activities. At this point, I am excited to kick things off and welcome Megan Busby, who is going to tell us a bit more about proclamations, resolutions, how are they different, and how are they the same. Welcome, Megan.
Thank you so much, Lauren. Hello, everyone. Welcome. Welcome, future advocates. We are here. We're excited to be here to speak with you today about proclamations and resolutions that we are currently working on here at AFTD. You may have seen some of this information floating around in a Help and Hope article on social media. And so we wanted to talk a little bit today about how you too can also obtain and secure a proclamation or a resolution. Next slide, please. So this is all related to FTD, or World FTD Awareness Week, which occurs every year at the end of September. It will occur this year, September 22nd to September 29th. And you can secure a proclamation or a resolution that proclaims that week as FTD Awareness Week in your hometown, in your city, your state, or your state. So the difference here is they're both very important ways of spreading FTD awareness in your hometown, home state, home city. The difference is a proclamation is more of a public announcement, which is issued by your typically your state governor. There is a form on the governor's website. So encourage anyone to Google your state governor's website, go to the website and literally search within the search bar for proclamations. And then it will walk you through the process of how to obtain one of those in your state. And if you are looking to do a proclamation in your city, city council, in your county, again, doing some research on your own around the different local government agencies in your area or governments in your area and figuring out their process by which to obtain a proclamation. It celebrates an event, or in our case, designates awareness periods. So it is to designate that week, September 22nd through the 29th, as FTD or World FTD Awareness Week. It's very also ceremonial, and encourage you, if you are obtaining a proclamation, that you usually have the option to either have the proclamation mailed to you, or you can go pick up the proclamation. If you do go to pick up the proclamation, oftentimes you may request that you snap a photo with the governor or the authority figure that is issuing the proclamation. A resolution is legislative, so it does require a bill to be passed. You need a sponsor or two co-sponsors that are willing to introduce the resolution, which again is a bill, and it requires a vote by all members of that house. So you may want a resolution. In my state is Maryland. So if I'm working on a resolution in Maryland, I would research and look up who my state senator and my state representative are. I would email them and or call them, their office, and ask if they would be willing to introduce a resolution that designates September 22nd through the 29th as World FTD Awareness Week. And then it would go through the legislative process, meaning it would be voted on in either the House or the Senate. In a lot of states, the House is referred to as the Assembly. And then a resolution is legally binding. So it is another sort of step, an elevated step when increasing awareness. It also is a really nice way of getting your foot into the door with your state legislators and building that relationship with them. So they're both really important. They are not, you can do both. So if you want to pursue a proclamation in your state by filling out the form, it is an easier lift for you as an advocate. I highly encourage you to do it. If you would also like to seek a resolution in your state, we are in the process of collecting the information of the contact information of those people in each state that are interested in doing a resolution so that we can form small groups. I think so you don't have to do it alone. You have others from the AFTD community that would be helping you to achieve this resolution. And we are going to talk more. You'll hear from Debbie next about her experience in obtaining and securing a proclamation in her home state of West Virginia. And then you will hear from my colleague, Matt Sharp, about the experience from one of our advocates in California who secured a resolution this year. So thank you all.
Thank you so much, Megan, for that wonderful explanation on proclamations, resolutions, and the slight differences between the two. Now, I am so excited to invite out Debbie Elkins, AFTD Ambassador of West Virginia, to share more about proclamations specifically and her experience obtaining her own proclamation in West Virginia. So welcome, Debbie, and we will advance to the next slide.
Thank you, Lauren. So I want to welcome everybody to this webinar, and it's really great to be able to share this information with everybody. I just want to start by saying I think that I became excited about advocacy after attending the education conference in Houston this year. And just a little plug for that, if no one's attended, you can attend virtually and you can also attend in person. But while we were at the education conference, we talked a lot about advocacy and making an effort this year for the FTD Awareness Week in September to obtain either a proclamation or a resolution in all 50 states. And getting excited about that at the education conference really brought me home, sort of emboldened to move ahead with that. And I want to say to anybody that's listening right now, you don't need to be an expert to be an advocate for FTD. If you're here and you're listening today, you're here for a reason. And I want to tell you that it's simple to take action to help us to raise awareness for those who are affected by FTD. So for me, it was just a matter of saying, I'm going to get involved. And the first thing I did was I looked up in my state of West Virginia and found that a resolution for this year would not be possible because our legislative body was not going to be in session until the first of the year. So I felt like I could then move forward with obtaining a proclamation. And I decided to go straight to the governor's office as opposed to something in my town or, something locally, because I really wanted to get my state on the map. And literally, there is a map on the website, and we'll share more about that, I'm sure, here in a moment. But it was important for me to do something, so I went forward with a proclamation. And the first step would be to go to the AFTD's Advocacy Action Center on the website, and you'll find a page there that has not only the steps that are involved, but also an email account. And I would really like to encourage anybody that's going to move forward with working on a proclamation or a resolution to send an email to advocacy@theaftd.org so that your name can be put on a list so that we're able to see in each area of the country who's working on what. And that way we don't have more people sort of working on the same thing, and that more people can sort of team up to get involved. You'll also find there a resolution toolkit and a proclamation toolkit. And what I did was I looked at the wording in the proclamation toolkit, and then I went to my state governor's page on the internet, and I found an area where I could submit for a proclamation. And it was so easy because all I needed to do literally was copy and paste the wording from the toolkit into the form that was on the governor's email site or website, and it created an email for me. If you can Google your governor's page and for submitting a proclamation, you will find it there. If you don't, you'll find a phone number that you can call and talk to somebody in the governor's office of your state. So the first step, again, would be to email the AFTD that you intend to move forward. And that's what I did. Then I filled out the form for obtaining a proclamation in the state of West Virginia. I submitted it. It literally took me not even 10 minutes, probably. The hardest part was waiting to hear something. And it took a good 4 or 5 weeks before I heard anything. And I received an email that the proclamation had been made. And they included a picture of the proclamation. And then later in the mail, they sent me the actual proclamation that you can see here on this slide. What I did after that was I let the AFTD know that I had been successful in obtaining a proclamation in the state of West Virginia, that we could check West Virginia off on the map. And truly, it was not a lot of heavy lifting. I know that obtaining a resolution is a little bit heavier, but once I've done this proclamation, I feel like the next step to obtaining a resolution will be a little less difficult because I see that I don't have to be an expert to advocate. And I want to encourage everybody that's listening today to try to make that happen in your state as well.
Thank you so much, Debbie. Hearing you speak is so motivating. Truly, anyone that is feeling worried about any type of barrier between them and advocacy, it is achievable. You can do it. You don't need to be a master by any means. Now, I do have another question for Debbie, but before I ask, I just want to point out on the next slide here that along with West Virginia, we have obtained proclamations in 4 states now: Maryland, Tennessee, Oklahoma, and West Virginia. And we just found out about Tennessee yesterday. So truly every day things are changing. And in all of these states below: Alabama, Arizona, Colorado, Illinois, Iowa, Massachusetts, Minnesota, New Jersey, Ohio, Virginia, Washington, Wisconsin, all these states that folks have submitted for proclamations. Debbie mentioned it could take a couple weeks and it is hard waiting, but they do come. So don't let that wait be too daunting. Before you go, Debbie, I do have one more question for you. I want to ask about a very important step in this process: working with AFTD to share your story about your successful proclamation. Could you share a bit about what you've been working on?
Well, I think it's important. First of all, I'd like to say that's incredible where all of the proclamations have been obtained, and for the areas that have submitted, or the states that have submitted as well. And it's just so exciting to know that in each of these states, somebody is working to get the message out that FTD is out here, and that it's different, and that it's important, and that we need the world to know about frontotemporal degeneration. So because of that, after obtaining the proclamation, it felt important to me to share that in some way. So working with the AFTD, we're going to come up with telling our story about our journey to diagnosis, and literally the things that are listed in the proclamation about why awareness is important are all of the reasons why we need to share our story along with the proclamation, because we went through every one of those things. The journey to diagnosis being 4 years, the misdiagnosis, the questions. So it's going to be putting the proclamation together with our story, and hopefully being able to share that locally, and maybe even on a bigger stage. But I just want to encourage everybody, once you get that proclamation, to make sure that you connect again with the AFTD to let people know that you have that, and then let's work on making it known on a bigger stage.
Absolutely. Thank you not only for joining us today, but for obtaining this proclamation and for sharing your story, because it is difficult at times, but so important. Getting that story out there is a key component to using proclamations and resolutions to raise awareness. And I know as soon as you let AFTD know, we're going to do our best to get everything out there as soon as possible. So thank you so much, Debbie, for joining us here today.
Thank you, Lauren.
Now, my pleasure. I am excited to invite Matt Sharp, AFTD's Advocacy Manager, who is going to share a bit more news about how to obtain a resolution.
Thank you, Lauren. And yes, thank you so much, Debbie, for everything you've been doing and continue to do. You're a wonderful advocate. All right, so to talk a little bit more about resolutions, they, like Debbie said, they can seem a little bit more daunting than a proclamation, in part because they require a sponsor, either your state senator or assembly person / representative to introduce the resolution into their house, which, of course, means that you have to set up a meeting with them, et cetera, et cetera. So it is a little bit more of a heavier lift, but, as Megan said, resolutions are important tools to raise awareness and bring attention to an important issue like FTD. And most legislators will recognize the value of that, and also appreciate the opportunity for bringing positive attention to their office, especially if there is also some media involved. So this sort of lays out here the process. The first step would be to identify who your legislator is, either your senator or your state representative. And you can contact these people at any time, but realize that each state has a different legislative calendar, and the state legislature has to be in session in order for a resolution to be passed. So that does affect the timing of things. But you can usually find your state's legislative calendar on their website somewhere. Every state has a website that will make public, when the Congress is in session. But again, you don't necessarily have to wait for them to be in session before you reach out to contact your legislator. You can start those conversations, when it works for you and their office. They'll work with you to figure out the schedule when you would be able to visit your legislator and make this request. So the resolutions really do follow the same basic process as legislation. It means that they're sponsored by someone, and then there's an opportunity for people to co-sponsor. They're then introduced into the Congress and ultimately voted on. But resolutions are rarely, if ever, met with any opposition, and they typically pass unanimously. They can be passed by either both or one house of Congress. So either the Senate or the Assembly/House, depending on what it's called in your state, can pass it individually. When it's passed together, it's often called a joint resolution. These are a little bit more complicated logistically, but they can often bring more attention to the issue if both houses of the Congress are working on them. And one of the challenges logistically, of course, is that if you want to do a joint resolution, you have to find a sponsor, both in the Senate and in the Assembly or in the House. But if you're interested in looking into that, you can usually get some help from your sponsor's office, because typically a senator will have somebody on the House or the Assembly side that they work with for a variety of reasons. So they can usually suggest somebody who may want to sponsor a joint resolution in the other House. And like Debbie said, we have sample text on our website that you can download to use as a template. In some cases, you may be able to use it, just cut and paste. In other times, your sponsor's office may want to make some changes as well. So, you'll have to work with them to figure out the exact text of the resolution. And realize that, even though it's going to be the senator or assembly person that is sponsoring and introducing the resolution, your contact will be a staffer, and that's completely normal. Usually in the process, you'll have a chance to probably meet the senator, but the person you'll be working with directly most often will be a staff person. And while you are working with that person, just make sure you remember to ask about the dates of when these things are going to be introduced and voted on, because those dates are important points where you can generate more attention and do things like help. We can AFTD can help mobilize other advocates in your area, either to reach out to their legislators to let them know about the resolution, and take that as an opportunity to educate them about FTD, and potentially even talk about other dementia-related bills that may be moving in the state. And then the day the resolution will be passed is another really important opportunity for more attention to raise awareness. Again, AFTD can help mobilize other advocates to potentially even show up at the state capitol to show support for the resolution, and for the legislators who are voting and sponsoring it. But there may also be opportunities to get local media involved. And again, you can ask your sponsor's office about what contacts they may have locally within TV or radio, even print outlets, because every office, of course, works with media regularly, so they may be able to give you some leads to bring even more attention to the resolution. And then, of course, remember to take lots of photos, and please remember to share them with AFTD, so we can also help share the news of your success. And then always remember to be sure to thank your legislator too. So that's, again, the sort of the overall process in a nutshell. And anybody has any questions, don't hesitate to use the contact number there at the top, the advocacy at the AFTD.org email. All right, next slide. So I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the resolutions that have been passed recently. Each state has a different process because each state legislature is different. And the resolutions in California, Delaware, and New York give a good example of sort of the range of these things. For example, in Delaware, the resolution was obtained by a volunteer named Jean Sestone, working with her state senator, Ira Hoffner. And this happened with basic minimal involvement by AFTD. In fact, we sort of came into the office on a Monday and looked at our email and found out that this had happened. So we were able to, after the fact, help share the news and promote it on our social media outlets. Well, in New York, it was a very different experience. We're lucky, AFTD is lucky to have somebody named Michelle Hinchy, who is a state senator in New York, who is a real champion for FTD in the state. Michelle Hinchy is the daughter of Maurice Hinchy, who was a long-term U.S. representative who passed in 2017. So after her father passed, Michelle kind of took it upon herself to be a voice in government for FTD, among many other issues too, of course. So Senator Hinchy has been passing an FTD Awareness Week resolution in New York, in the New York State Senate for every year since 2021. And usually in most states, these resolutions are going to need to be passed every year. So it's not like a one and done thing. You can go back year after year and do this again, which is, again, a really great opportunity for generating more awareness. This year, the Senator Hinchy combined the awareness resolution with a press conference to introduce her bill to create an FTD registry in the state of New York. So it was a really unique opportunity for both for the senator, but also for AFTD. The senators planned a news conference in May that we attended, some AFTD staff attended, including Emma Hemming-Willis, who is a national advocate, of course, as you know, for FTD. And Emma and AFTD CEO Susan Dickinson were recognized on the floor of the Senate when Senator Hinchy read the resolution this year. So it was very different, obviously, than the Delaware event, but largely in part because of all the work that Senator Hinchy's been doing in New York. And she's going to be reintroducing her registry bill this year. It got past the Senate in New York this past year, but this upcoming year, it's going to be introduced early on in both the House and the Assembly there. And we're really looking forward to working with their office to try and get that passed this year. And then in California, again, it was sort of a whole other different process. In California, the whole effort was driven by FTD super advocate named Wanda Smith, who was recently recognized by Alzheimer's San Diego as Visionary of the Year for her dementia advocacy and awareness work, both in California, but also nationally and internationally. Wanda has been an FTD and dementia advocate for over 40 years now. So there's very few people like her on the planet who have both knowledge, expertise, and connections that Wanda does. She was able to get a joint resolution passed by working with her Senator Brian Jones and her Assemblyperson Brian Manchin. AFTD was able to recognize the passage of the resolution in Sacramento with a day of meetings with state lawmakers, as well as Governor Gavin Newsom. This included Emma Willis again, as well as Wanda. And we took the opportunity to highlight future actions policymakers in California can take to support FTD diagnosis and treatment, including things like designating a seat on the state Alzheimer's Disease and Related Disorders Advisory Committee, and as well as adding FTD to California's Neurodegenerative Disease Registry. So those are continuing efforts that are going to be going on in the coming year when California starts its next legislative session. So, and again, Emma, Susan, and Wanda were all recognized on the floor of both the House and the Senate in California when that resolution was passed, which was the first such resolution in California and the second one in the nation. So that kind of gives a pretty broad example of what can be done with these resolutions, from something fairly simple that was accomplished by one person to all the way to, press conferences led by senators themselves. And that's, hopefully we'll have some questions about resolutions at the end if you have any questions. So please don't hesitate to put them in the Q&A. And with that, I'll turn it back to you, Lauren.
So much Paul is so excited to reminisce on the success in California, New York. It really is incredible. I'm so excited to do this once again. Make another list here. AFTD advocates have started the resolution process in Arkansas, Arizona, Colorado, Massachusetts, New Jersey, Ohio, Oklahoma, Oregon, Tennessee, and Wisconsin. And we will get to this in a minute of how to get involved if you do see your state, or if you don't. But thank you again. Now, at this point, we have learned what proclamations are, what resolutions are, their differences, their similarities. Now we're going to bring back Megan Garsby, who's going to talk a bit about why they're so important to FTD advocacy and what you can do to obtain one in your state. Welcome back.
Thanks, Lauren. Next slide. So I just wanted to start by pointing out these two pictures. The image on the right, hopefully you're right, is of Senator Michelle Hinchey, who Matt spoke at length about, who is a state senator in New York and the first legislator to ever introduce an FTD awareness resolution in their state. And she is quite a champion of FTD issues, as Matt has already explained. And this is a picture of that press conference that he referenced. So you can see all of the AFTD advocates behind us, as well as Susan, unfortunately, our CEO, Susan Dickinson, is hidden a little by Senator Michelle Hinchey, but to the left of her is Emma Hemming-Willis, who was there with us as well. And then on your left is the map that we referenced, or that Debbie referenced earlier in the webinar. And this map can be found on our website, on the Advocacy Action Center, part of our website. And you can see just by looking at the key that we are keeping track of awareness proclamations that have been obtained, as well as resolutions that have, and then where there's activity in those states, either on proclamations or resolutions or both. So you can see the multicolored ones means that both are being worked on in that state. Definitely encourage you, if you are from one of these states and you want to know what's happening in that state related to either a proclamation or a resolution, then email the advocacy@theaftd.org email address, and we are more than happy to let you know what's happening in your state, give you advice, put you in touch with others that might be working on a resolution or interested in working on a resolution. If there's a proclamation in your state, that does not mean that you can't pursue a proclamation in your local town or city. So certainly would encourage that if one has already been obtained in your state. I wouldn't recommend that if there is one that's being worked on in your state, I wouldn't recommend that you also submit for a proclamation in that state. There is no need for more than one request. So again, email us and we will guide you in all of this and through all of these processes. But why is this so important? Well, I think the number one reason is really around spreading, expanding, increasing awareness of FTD locally to you, as well as across the country. So, I mean, looking at the map, I would love to see that map, all solid green or teal and red through by the end of this calendar year. But if it's not, then certainly I think that it sets us for a goal for next year, because as it's already been stated, proclamations and resolutions do need to be reintroduced every year. And so it's important that we keep this momentum going year after year. So if we achieve, let's say, half the country this year, then, we have a goal set for us in the future. But it definitely, like I said, it's so important because it really helps get people talking about FTD. You know, how many times have you, maybe if you're a care partner and you've spoken to another friend and explaining your situation and how you've been personally impacted by someone living with FTD, they have no idea what you're talking about, right? So we really want to, it helps to increase, you know, public awareness and visibility, but also with the stakeholders of legislators and policymakers, right? We are starting to have more conversations, and the more conversations we have about it, the more they're really going to pay attention and then begin to shape policies, you know, that improve care and support and respite services. And Michelle Hinchy, or Senator Hinchy, is a perfect example of this, you know, starting out with an awareness resolution and now has introduced a registry state bill in New York. So it really is that sort of first step in the direction of getting more people aware of it, so then they can legislate, you know, for it, for policies that really better the lives of those living with FTD and those impacted by FTD. And I think next slide. So there we go. So what can you do? I think we've pretty much covered this over and over again in all of our slides on the webinar today, but I want to reiterate it again. One of the first things you can do, and I will tell you, we already received an email while we have been on this webinar from someone attending the webinar who is very interested in pursuing a proclamation and a resolution in their state. So very exciting. Contact advocacy@theaftd.org to get started as your first step. Also encourage you, though, to visit our website, where you will find both of these toolkits that we've referenced also earlier today. We have a toolkit on resolutions and a toolkit on proclamations. It explains more what each of them are in great detail and why you should be requesting one, as well as the language that you need to request one. Reach out to your legislators. I would even say, I would research your legislators, right? There are many people that don't know who their state representative or state senator is. If you're not involved in politics or you haven't been advocating, you know, you really just you just don't know who's representing you in your state. I know that I personally am was one of those people before I started advocating for issues. So definitely do some digging on just on the internet, you can go to your state legislative website and research, you know, who is representing you, who are your particular legislators, and then of course then reach out to them and ask if they are interested in sponsoring or introducing a resolution. And then mobilizing other advocates in your state, just like increasing and expanding awareness by talking about FTD. The more we talk about, you know, the advocacy work that we're trying to do, the more people will be interested and get involved. And so the more people that we have, the stronger force that we are. And so I did also want to mention something that is not yet on our website, but is coming soon. We will have press release templates for both the proclamation and the resolution, so that if you as an advocate, like Debbie, obtained her proclamation in West Virginia and is now working on some earned media opportunities, we would have a press release on our website that would be downloadable for you to use as well, to try to get some localized press, you know, in your local newspaper, to talk more about it, to amplify and highlight the efforts that you're doing. And so then again, that increases the awareness even more. So obtaining the proclamation is awesome and amazing. And then talking about it through social media, as well as regular media, is super important. And we are also here to help you along the way with that and every step of the way. So at this time, I think everyone is coming back to join us, right?
Yeah, thanks so much, Megan. And sorry folks, about my mic issues. I'm hoping it's resolved now. I was just so excited to list off all the places that we have resolutions in process. But just like Megan mentioned, it's very easy to get involved. If you didn't see your state listed on the proclamation list, please email us at advocacy@theaftd.org. If you didn't see your state on the resolution list, please reach out to us. We'll help you get started. If you did see your state on the resolution list, reach out to us. We can help you join the team. So right now, if you haven't sent in your question yet, please feel free to do so. I want to start with Megan. We have a couple questions regarding proclamations. If somebody has already submitted for a proclamation, can someone submit a second one? If not, what else can they do to get involved?
Yes, so I did just say I would not recommend that you submit a request if a request has already been submitted. So the first step will be, again, just can't emphasize it enough, emailing the advocacy team at AFTD so that we can then inform you if one is already being worked on or submitted in your state. However, so I wouldn't recommend that you do it if there's already one at the state level that has been submitted. However, if there's one at the state level that has been submitted, the recommendation would be that you look to your local government entities. So your city government, if you're in a city proper, or a county level government, to see if you're able to obtain a proclamation at that level. And I think we even have an advocate in, I'm going to say Ohio. I don't know if that's correct, but I think it's Ohio that is working on obtaining proclamations in a couple of different, cities/towns in Ohio. So that would be my recommendation.
Perfect. And I'm going to stick with you for one more here. What is the plan for connecting folks with other advocates in their state? So if somebody has already submitted for a proclamation and they can't do that, is there a way for them to connect and be strategic?
Absolutely. I would say we're kind of planting advocacy seeds right now, right? AFTD has not always had a formalized advocacy program where we are mobilizing and galvanizing people at what we call the grassroots level. And so we are building it every day, and this is a piece of it. So absolutely, we are capturing the information that people are sending to us. So your contact information, if you're interested in this area, we will be connecting you, whether it's for a resolution effort, because the proclamation, again, is ceremonial. It is a certificate. A resolution has to go through the legislative process. We would want to connect you so that you could work together and strategize around obtaining a resolution in your area as a group. And then, or if that's already been obtained, and then in addition to, if it hasn't, we would like to, keep that group talking as we have pieces of legislation that would be coming up in your state that we would want you to act upon. And that could be, emailing through our system. We have a system that allows you to email your legislators. It matches you directly based on your address. Or it could be that you actually are going to, and this is what we want everyone to get to the point where they feel comfortable to do a face-to-face meeting with their legislator to help build that relationship and rapport. And so we would 100% encourage that people do that in a group setting. And then you could certainly encourage each other and work together and strategize as you like. And we would support you along the way.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Megan. Shifting gears a little bit here, Matt, I have a question for you. You mentioned the registry bill in New York. Could you share a little bit more information about what that is?
Sure, yeah, absolutely. So a registry is usually a database that collects information. In this case, it would be on FTD diagnoses in the state of New York. So what the registry bill proposed is that through the New York Department of Health, they create one of these databases where diagnosticians would have to report a clinical diagnosis of FTD. One of the things that is really lacking is a basic statistic in FTD, like what is the number of people who have FTD within a state or a city or the country. So those basic statistics are missing for FTD, and this would this registry would be a huge step forward in trying to start gaining more information about, how many people have FTD or how many people are diagnosed with FTD within a state. And then we could get into more details about who are they, where are there any patterns? So lots of potential questions could be asked of that data. But the first step is just to create that infrastructure to allow the data to be captured. So that's, in a nutshell, what the New York Registry bill proposes.
And to get a little bit more broad here, to do a follow-up on that, is there a way that folks can advocate for a registry bill in their state at some point in time? Is there a way to do it nationally? What can be done if other advocates were interested in a registry bill?
Well, one of the great things about Hinchy's registry bill is that it's giving AFTD an opportunity to see how this process works. This is sort of a test run in some ways, and we are very much expecting to learn a lot. That would not be possible had not Senator Hinchy on her own accords, introduced this bill. So I guess part of the answer to that question is that we'll see. We're hoping to learn more that we are going to be able to apply to different states. And we are definitely thinking of the New York Registry bill as a potential template that could be replicated across the country. Doing it nationally would be a very different endeavor. It's not impossible, but chances are it wouldn't be done through legislation.
Right. Thank you so much for that information. Next, I'm actually going to take this one. I'm excited that our advocate Karen is on the webinar right now, who obtained the proclamation in Maryland just last week. We do have that. Keep an eye on AFTD's social media. You may see a familiar face on there very soon. But Karen did point out that though she has contacted 4 legislators, they're not in session in Maryland. So Matt, would you like to speak a little bit more about just reiterating, if legislators aren't in session, that folks may not be able to obtain their resolution until that's so?
Right, exactly. So the legislature has to be in session for it to pass. But well, again, every state's a little different. Some states don't actually have year-round legislators. But I wouldn't hesitate to tell anybody to reach out, to find out what's going on. These offices are there to serve the constituents, the people who vote for them. So everybody is totally within their rights to reach out to their own senator or congressperson and just ask to talk to them. Most offices are going to be really gracious and welcoming to any constituent who reaches out to them. But again, it's a little different from state to state. So, do a little research, find out what's going on in your district, and then take those necessary next steps.
Perfect. Thank you, Matt. Debbie, I'm going to hand this one off to you, since you are now the expert, that you have a proclamation. Do proclamations need to be passed every year? So is your proclamation an ongoing proclamation, or is it just this year and you will have to resubmit for next year?
I will have to resubmit. It is only for this year, but the good news is that once you've done it and you know how to do it, keeping it on my radar will mean that it's something that I will just, summer of next year, I will work on getting the proclamation for FTD Awareness Week in September. So unfortunately, yes, we have to work on it every year. But the good news is that once you've done it, you realize that it's something that with the toolkit that the AFTD provides, it can easily be can be obtained every year.
Thanks so much, Debbie. And we're definitely hoping that, particularly with resolutions, as you start to speak more with your legislators, you will develop a relationship with them. So getting that resolution the next year may be a bit easier year after year. This next question I'm going to throw to you, Megan. What would an FTD Awareness Week look like on the national level? Is that something that's possible? What does that look like?
Such a good question. It is possible. I don't believe the federal government, I don't think they ever pass resolutions anymore, but you can introduce them and gain co-sponsors, and still receive a ceremonial, certificate that shows that this exists. But I would definitely want to confirm that. So I've worked in the past on a national resolution for another foundation. I still have it here in my office, but that was 7 years ago. So things change very frequently. Well, things move slowly at the federal government level, but they change pretty frequently. And so I would just want to confirm whether or not resolutions are being passed or if they're not being passed currently by at the federal level. But it is something, it's certainly on our radar, and something we would, if it is something that they are passing, or I guess even if they're not officially passing it, it does serve a really great purpose in increasing awareness on Capitol Hill. So it's another tool, if you will, in our toolbox that can be used to start talking about FTD at the federal level. So it's on our radar. I will confirm and get back to you folks through our advocacy update. So I do want to just say, for anyone that is on the webinar that's not currently signed up sort of officially as an advocate, I would encourage you to do so again on our Advocacy Action Center on the website. I think it's on the next slide, Matt, if you wanted to just go forward one so folks have it on their screens. This is the address you can type into your browser to join our network and join our efforts. And we do now have a monthly advocacy update that goes out to folks that are signed up on this list, which would include different pieces of, education and updates around what we're doing at the federal level and the state level.
Thank you very much. Matt, I'm going to head back to you on a question with the registry. The question is, can the states access the FTD registry database that is already in existence rather than making another database?
There may be some limited access, but I think the answer is basically no. The FTD Disorders Registry is really set up as a research registry, and that's a very different sort of database than the New York registry, than what the New York registry bill would create. So I know there's probably a lot more complicated answer, but basically they are very different things meant for very different purposes. So.
Thank you very much. We have one more question, unless anybody else wants to send something through. So I'm going to hand this over to you, Megan, and then to also wrap up our webinar here today. The question is, how is a proclamation and a declaration different, or is it the same thing?
I actually answered that question directly.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah, it should be the same thing. A proclamation is a declaration. Unless I don't know all the levels of government in each state. So if there is a city or a county that you've gone to that website and it is saying that you could obtain a declaration and a proclamation, I would love, so I did ask the person if they could just email me personally what state they live in so I could research it a little bit more and understand if there's a difference. But typically it's the same thing.
Okay, perfect. Well, then I'll hand it over to you to wrap us up here today.
Great. Thank you so much. This does conclude our today's webinar. I want to thank all of our presenters again, Lauren, Debbie, Matt, and thanks to everyone who submitted a question. I was really excited to see that a lot of questions came in, and I hope we were able to answer them. If we weren't, obviously, please email that advocacy@theaftd.org email address and let us know if you have any more questions, and or if you are interested in taking that first step to pursue a proclamation or a resolution in your state or area. We would be more than happy to support you throughout that whole process. And thank you all again. Have a great afternoon.